Okay, here we go. You have an interesting story. The information that you've provided regarding kind of the energetic coursing and the kundalini awakening, the solar plexus pain, all of this stuff is really quite interesting. So I'm curious what is going to come through in this session. So obviously I won't cover everything that you've put in there, because there is a lot. You've provided a lot of information, which is what I asked for, so I appreciate that. That makes it easy for me. So I think I have a pretty good idea what your priorities are. So I will suggest to my channels we start there, and then I'll just follow their lead and see where it takes us. But I'm already getting the feeling that there's quite a bit to be said. All right, here we go. Thank you for this very interesting presentation, and also for giving us the opportunity to relay to you information which is coming from your higher aspect, but you are holding at bay. So what we are going to do is, in a sense, we will channel ourselves. We will be in the channeling state while we are embedded in the avatar of Muz, and we are going to, in a sense, be a conduit for your own higher self-wisdom. This is why you have sought out to have a channeling session with Muz, as in with us, because it has been the prodding of your higher self to make more avenues of communication possible. And this is one of those ways it can be done. So, regarding the kundalini awakening, we are perceiving, and again, this is a mix of information coming from your higher self aspect and also us, because we are forming the group being with your higher self. And this is how channeling is done. Channeling is the formation of a group being. So even though you hear us speaking now, it is not just us, and Muz is being just a vessel, because a direct artifact of channeling through Muz is that he is part of the group beingness. So in a very similar way, we are forming a group being with your higher self, with your higher aspect. And so when the information comes through, it is going to be the information from the group, meaning that it is coming from you, and it is also coming from us. And to a degree, it is also coming from us, because all of these are components of the group being. So, your kundalini awakening is a release or an unstifling. So, as we perceive it, you have a capacity to flow energy through your physical body, which is more than is typical. Let us say it that way. In past lives, in the life preceding this one or the one before, you had an interest in developing energy flow, understanding the chi, the kundalini, the chakras, and so you develop the capacity to flow energy through the body at a degree of ampage or voltage which was above what is typical for a human being. And now that you have been incarnated into this current life cycle, there is a remnant of that capacity. And yet, because you have not in this lifetime made or developed the skill or reawakened the skill of channeling this larger flow of energy, then what is occurring is there is an incongruency. So, from the higher self, non-physical aspect, you have had the experience of flowing a large degree of energy through the physical avatar. And so it is still available, yet in your current incarnation, you have not sort of reawakened that capacity. But you are still a young man, so there is time. And this conversation that we are having with you now is part of your awakening. So from your higher self aspect, you want to make it known to this avatar identity you are living at the moment that this is a capacity, and if you are able to reawaken that capacity, then you are going to find that many of these things about your life which you have dissatisfaction with are going to dissipate and recede into the background as you start to sort of march forward in a more robust, invigorated, and powerful way. So, this is what the higher self wants. The higher self enjoyed that experience in these previous lives where you, the avatar that you are currently incarnated as, developed these capacities. This was a very satisfying experience for your higher self, which of course is you, because this is the puppet and the higher self is the true aspect of you. So the puppeteer is the higher self, the avatar is the puppet. Generally, on your planet at the moment, is the puppet assumes too much autonomy, meaning that the mind takes over and it tries to orchestrate the life of the puppet, yet it is not qualified to do that. It is intended to be just a computation device which assists the higher self. So when a human allows the higher self to claim greater dominion over the puppet and allow it to puppeteer it as intended, because the mind has been quietened or subjugated into a non-dominant position, then what can be accomplished in a single lifetime from the perspective of what the objectives are for the higher self is much greater. And so from the higher self perspective, there is much greater efficiency in the fulfilling of its purpose, which is divine purpose, which is to know itself through experience, and that is the experience of the avatar. So, and this is so because when the higher self is allowed to take more dominion, so it is the puppeteer, the avatar is the puppet, then there is more boldness, there is more risk-taking, there is more vulnerability, there is more seeking of confronting experiences. And it is through this way of living that the experiences one has, as in the avatar, are so diverse and so on the frontier that there is this continual growth, rather than living a life of safety where it is just the daily repetition of the same thing, which is within the comfort zone. There is no confrontation of the unknown. There is no challenge of experience, but just this monotonous over and over and over of the same thing. Occurring because the mind has assumed control, and the mind is always most concerned with safety. And so it is most at ease when one does not go outside of this comfort zone where there is no challenge, where nothing changes. And as a result, there is no growth. So, when you had the initial experience of this energetic release, it was, in a way, a crushing of the mind's authority. So it is also known as an ego death. The weight of anxiety, the weight of fears, of worries, concerns, in the environment of physical fatigue, of fatigue literally of the brain organ, through lack of sleep, being isolated, the continual pressure, actually caused the mind to collapse. And so when it collapsed, it was no longer the obstruction, it was no longer had its hands on the controls or squeezing of the valve to make sure that not too much energy flowed through. And when it was crushed in this way, and it kind of was rolled to the side as a impotent device, then this energy flow potential which you possess was allowed to course through your biology and through your energy centers in an unhindered way. And this was a real triumph for your higher self, because your higher self has been wanting you to understand what is possible when you live in a way which is more vulnerable, which is more surrendered, which is less guarded, which is more trusting. And it did what it could to bring about these conditions. It does not wish to harm you, of course, because it is you. And your higher self understands that this is the temple through which it is honored. So it only wants for this perspective of you, which is most conducive to enlightening, to the realization of what you are and what your capacities are within this physical illusion, such that you can get more down to the business of realizing who and what you are, knowing yourself experientially, fulfilling your purpose, which is divine purpose. So, what the higher self wants you to recall most succinctly is the immense feelings of love and the extraordinary pleasure of being completely encapsulated within your impression of the world and within your physicality, of bliss, of the sense that everything is perfect, everything is beautiful. This was a very significant moment, and your most aligned use of this experience, aligned with this higher self objective, this true you, is to become more skilled at silencing the mind. Your mind, from this perspective of the identity, the avatar, is fearful and is dominant to a degree which is greatly diminishing you. As we see it, just hold for a moment while we clarify. We feel there is a fear of inadequacy. And this fear of inadequacy, this fear that you are not enough, that if you were authentically yourself and allowed a degree of vulnerability which fully exposed you to the world so that all could see who you actually are, would be shameful, would be damaging or hurt oneself, because the world would then realize that you are an inadequate being. And this fear, we feel, stems from childhood experiences. It stems from a relationship that you had with a significant adult in the earlier period of your life. Now, we don't say this as a condemnation of anyone, because everybody is in stages of growth. And so whoever it was that was communicating with you or relaying a sense of self in this way was themselves also much younger than they are now. So it does not signify that there is someone in your life that you should have resentment towards. But this is just the machinations of the illusion. Because ultimately, everybody in your experience, including yourself, are all the same being, playing with the illusion such that there can be this diversity of experience for the purpose of the one knowing itself to completion experientially. So, this severe stemming of the flow of energy, it came about when you were a young person. We are seeing a child, maybe 2-3 years old, and when you were very invigorated by your own energy, by your own power, those that were around you, they stemmed your flow of energy because they perceived it as being disruptive, as being boisterous. And you were in a state, in these moments, of total and utter authenticity of who you were. The mind at this stage was still very undeveloped. You didn't have internal dialogue. And so you were living in a very clear mindscape. And so the higher self flow was very, very pure. And as you had a capacity to flow energy, which is more than typical as a result of these past life experiences where you literally developed that skill, then in this child form that you were, when this energy was allowed to flow in this sort of empty mindscape where you were sort of authentically being yourself, the degree of energy coursing through was a lot. And it was perceived by those around you who, of course, are not educated, not trained, haven't been shared any type of sacred knowledge because it has been deliberately expunged from your culture, completely didn't understand what it was. And so for them, the way to shape you was to make you close down the energy. And in doing that, you had a sense within self that you are being very authentically who you are. And when you were told to inhibit that, to shut that down, then you took that into self to mean that the true you, the authentic you, isn't worthy to be shared with the rest of the world. And this led you to have a sense of guilt, a sense of shame, a sense of inadequacy. That the very true, authentic version of who you are, which was being real-time streamed into your avatar and then instantaneously emanated as your presence. It was very authentic. That it was inappropriate. And being a obedient and dutiful child, and also a very intelligent child, you made the connection very rapidly. And you were able to modify your behavior almost immediately. So this then became sort of a foundational building block of who you became as you continued to build a more sophisticated personality, the construct of the mind, on top of this sort of early impressions of who you are allowed to be, who you are permitted to be, who you can be and receive the admiration and love rather than the admonishment of those who were immediately in your environment, had authority and were important to you. So, this was apparent, or perhaps even this was a carer, perhaps a teacher from very early schooling. The origins are, or the source of the origin is less important than understanding that this has been the sort of the mechanism of self-inhibition that you have carried with you throughout your life. And this experience that you had, where the mind collapsed under the weight of the conditions which we've already discussed, and you were able to have this very expanding experience, you are right to remain focused on it. And what you will discover over the course of your life, because you are still a young man. So this enlightenment, this awakening is going to continue for you. So we really have no concerns. You are on the right path. Asking questions, seeking answers is going to lead you to the place that your higher self is puppeteering you towards, that you are guiding yourself towards. And we can see that as you become a more matured man and you have your family, that you are going to be very more stepped into this sort of higher energy state that you are capable of. And we perceive, as a direct result, in a very large way, from this discussion you're having now, that you are going to develop a growing interest in how you can reawaken this understanding that you had previously in previous incarnations of being able to flow the energy, being an energy master in a way. And we perceive this is something that you are going to teach to your children. And one of your children in particular, you will find, will have an amazing capacity to understand and utilize this teaching which you are going to provide them from this developed understanding that you are going to create in time going ahead. And this will be so because you and this child have made an agreement already, because you are sharing the same soul group, that prior to their arrival, you are going to become proficient in understanding how to control the flow of energy, to allow it to course through in a significant way, such that you can teach them this skill. And this is because in the previous incarnations, this child who is coming and you will instruct was your instructor. They were the master that taught you how to control your energy. And now it is your turn to be the master. So, before we go further, let's specify. This child will not be any more significant than any of your other children. You have made agreements with all of your children. This is how it works. So, we are just speaking of this particular agreement you have with that particular child. All of your children will be from your soul group. So all of you have had lives before and have agreements about how you will assist each other in each subsequent incarnation for the achievement of the divine purpose. So as we perceive it from this perspective of your higher self is very pleased. Your higher self sees this as significant progress, and your higher self wants to convey to you, there is no need to be concerned. There's no need to be concerned about these smaller aspects of the things like the energy, the feeling of the knife in the chest returning, or the feeling you get with the rotating, the kundalini syndrome. These type of things, they are saying it is not important. It is an insignificant sort of small side effect. So what they wish for you to do instead, this higher self wishes for you to do, is to start developing your capacity to flow your energy. Seek out teachers. It does not need to be going in person, sitting in front of your guru, but literally just find education on flowing energy, and you will find that you pick it up very fast. You have an understanding which comes to you much more rapidly than it would for others. When you are doing it within the vacuum of it's just you with the education, it's possible you won't have the appreciation of how quickly you're picking it up. And as you become more masterful at flowing this energy, then you will find that all of these sort of other smaller little niggles, little artifacts of discomfort and things aren't going the way you'd like them to, in your life will begin to smooth out, will begin to sort of resolve themselves. And you will be manifesting a life which is much more conducive with the life that you would like to live. So rather than placing your focus on the job, or placing your focus on the girlfriend, or placing your focus on these other sort of small little pockets of your life, you will have a much more impactful transformation if you instead focus on the inner, focus on being a master of understanding and controlling your energy, and doing it in a way which is very authentic, very vulnerable, very open. So, let us give you some suggestions now on how you can begin living in a way when you are out interfacing with the world, which is more conducive to this sort of new way of being, this new way of expressing, of existing, of flowing, coursing the energy. Have the rational awareness. Let's begin this way. Have the irrational awareness that you had experiences as a child from adults who were well-meaning, that led you to believe that being the authentic self was inappropriate, was undesired, was better to be locked away, and instead present a facade, present an inauthentic, synthetic version of self, which was appropriate, which sort of melded into the environment in a way which wasn't displeasing to anyone else. And so there is a degree of inauthenticity about who the world thinks that you are. Now, we understand this can be difficult to hear, and it could be even a little hurtful or a little annoying to be told such a thing as this. But this is what you wish to know. This is what your higher self wishes to communicate to you. So, the higher self, it wants to have a degree of dominion over the avatar where there is more vulnerability, there is more risk-taking, there is more spontaneity. And this is going to require that the mind is silenced, and so there is less computation about what is occurring when you are interfacing with your environment, with the greater world. So the mind that you have in your current avatar is very analytical, it's very intelligent. And as there is a diminished faith in the higher self download stream resulting from this early period, then this analytical mind has assumed a great deal of dominion. and it analyzes everything very intricately because it is blessed and cursed with a high capacity for intellectualism. So, what is occurring is your experiences or your moments are being fragmented into very small moments. So, this is something that, as an aside, this is something that we are going to channel on in the future. We are feeling this is a good topic to channel on. So thank you for being in the inspiration for this future topic. What you are doing, which is very common, and particularly for those that have very little faith in the energy flow of themselves and have a very analytical, intellectual mind, is your experience is fragmented into very small moments. So rather than having a long experience, so perhaps when you're out and about, you have an experience that goes for 1 hour. So you go out, you go shopping, and there's a 1 hour experience, and then at the end of that, you come home again, and we could say that's the conclusion of that experience. And so at the end of that, you might walk in, put the groceries down, and say, oh, that went pretty good. But those that are very intellectual and very fearful of being authentically themselves, or anxious at being authentically themselves, and very or have a sort of pronounced degree of concern about how they're being perceived by the outer world, will break their experience, this 1 hour long experience, into many smaller moments. So it is a fragmented experience. So instead of going out into the world, catching a taxi, getting in the car, driving bus, whatever it takes, then doing the grocery shopping, going through the checkout, walking past many people, and then coming home and putting the groceries down when they walk in the door and go, oh, that was pretty good. Instead, they will walk out the front door and a person walks past them and they'll stop, and that will be one experience, and they'll judge that one experience. How'd that go? I think I looked okay when that person walked past me. Then they'll turn around and then they'll start walking towards the car or the bus stop, and they'll walk past 3 other people and they'll stop. Again, they'll sort of fragment that experience. So they won't literally stop, but they'll fragment that experience. And so then there's another moment of judging oneself. How did I do with those 3 people that just walked past? Or even that one person, but 3 judgments. And this creates a great degree of stifling of who you actually are when the experience is fragmented to such a degree. So, lengthen your experiences. So, when you are going to do something, when you're going to go on a mission, for example, don't judge yourself frequently throughout that experience. Instead, choose to define what the mission is as a single experience. And then, as it is a single experience, there is no bus stops, or there's no sort of little milestones within this larger experience where you can stop and make a judgment of the preceding 30 seconds, of the preceding 3 minutes. And this is going to free you from activity of the mind. This will take some experience, but it's going to free you from activity of the mind. And the mind will be allowed to sort of subside into silence. Because as there is not a continual judgment of every 30 seconds, then there's really no need, there's no function for it to fulfill. And this will allow you to be much more authentically the self. And when you're in this state of mind silence, then the mind isn't continually interjecting and interrupting the flow. And what you can be instead is spontaneous. So when you have an inspiration to say something, or to smile at another human being, or to wave, or to say a joke, or anything with people we know, with people who are strangers, then allow that to enter the space. Allow that to become your presence. And this will, if you practice this more and more, allow a unfettered flow or coursing of the energy which is available to you. And the reason that you felt an affinity with the channel we did, which was about the higher self, is because there is resonance. The information in that channel struck a chord with you because there is resonance with what it is you wish to convey to this avatar aspect of yourself from the higher aspect. So, when you are in this flow state, where you are no longer fragmenting your experiences into much smaller experiences, and you're allowing there to be a space where you can be authentically present in the moment, then much of your neuroses will also begin to just resolve. Because neuroses is literally breaking an experience into smaller fragments to judge it. That is neuroses. And so as a result, your neuroses will fall away and you'll more and more become present in the moment authentically as yourself. And you will find that you become more charismatic, you become more wise, you become more magnetic to other people, and you'll become more attractive to women. So, don't compromise on who you are. Be authentically who you are, which means be brave enough to be vulnerable. And this isn't going to be achievable unless you rationalize and process this childhood experience you had and give it a different definition. Because you process it as a very inexperienced child and the definition you gave it isn't serving you. At that time, probably it served you because you were no longer being reprimanded, you were no longer being admonished by this adult or adults that originally incorporated that concept into who you were. However, it serves no purpose now and is a great hindrance. So, bring it out of the subconscious. Remember, as best you can, that experience. So, go into a meditative, self-hypnotic state and jump back. So think of the times in your life where you have felt some sense of inadequacy or a sense of unworthiness, and keep tracing it back. Keep going back. Every time you recall one of those experiences, the most recent could have been 2 days ago, could have been this morning. And then think, when was the time before that? And when was the time before that? And then start taking greater leaps. When was the time in the last 5 years where I felt this most profoundly? And go back 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 until you find the place which seems to be the original version. There is nothing preceding that. And as best you can, remember that experience, but perceive it from your adult eyes and understanding that you possess now. And realize that it was something entirely different to what you thought it was. And it came from a person that didn't have the realization, the state of enlightenment, of awakeness, to do better. And so then give it a new definition. And that new definition, we will leave that to you, how you wish to redefine it. But in a general sense, redefine it in a way which sets you free, which allows you to be the authentic, vulnerable self in every moment. You are drawn to music because when you are creating music, you are allowing yourself to be authentically yourself, because the music is a permission slip in a way. When you are immersed in your music, you are creating your music, you are making the sort of beautiful melodies of your music. That is a license to be vulnerable, a license to be yourself, because this is art. This is the expected construct of the music paradigm, that you can be that way. And this is why you feel very drawn to it. And this is why you feel a great degree of satisfaction from your music. Because it is in those moments that you are being vulnerable. So, this is another practice which we suggest. Play music, as in literally play and sing, and become very cognizant or very connected, very aware of this feeling of flow and vulnerability which you allow yourself to experience when you are very deeply immersed into the music, so it's a beautiful experience for you. Become familiar with that. And then when you are, hang on to that feeling. And then when you are in an environment where you are communicating with other people, particularly if you're communicating with a girl, allow that freedom, that flow of beauty to be your state of beingness when you are communicating with the outer world. Allow that flow of vulnerability to fill the moment, such there is a beautiful melody of your presence. Although it is not coming in the form of music, but it is the same energy, the same beautiful flow of melody, which is coming through you and being shaped into an authentic personality of who you actually are. When we listen to your music, we sense that you are a beautiful being, and you live in a state of being misunderstood. You misunderstand yourself as a result of these childhood experiences, and in the way that the world perceives you, you again are misunderstood. And the reason that you experience confusion, for example, about why that girl some way felt suspicious and threatened by you, is because she misunderstood you, which was laid on top of your misunderstanding about yourself, stemming back from these early childhood experiences. But this isn't a great tragedy. This isn't a great problem, because you are on the path of self-revelation. It is absolute serendipity that you are here, sitting there right now, listening to this dialogue, this flow of information, which is coming from the extended group being, of which your higher self is a part. So, you are well and truly on the path to these issues resolving. And it has come about this way because you are so earnest in your seeking. This is one element of your higher self aspect which has not been squeezed off. And that is the curiosity to understand self. The curiosity to know, who am I? What is this? What did it mean? How can I do that? Why? This is the curiosity of the higher self, wishing to know itself experientially. So, you have much practice and understanding ahead of you, but you are absolutely on the right path. So, we see a great vision for you. Great vision in terms of how well you will get to know yourself and the degree of mastery that you will have over yourself. Yet we wish to reiterate, it will come about as a result of you being a dutiful practitioner of this understanding, remembering that you are in a way duty bound or honor bound to be proficient and ready to take your place as the instructor when this relevant child of yours will be born. So, we hope that understanding will be the fuel in a way, partially, to keep you on this path of revelation and discovery of who and what you truly are. We would say, although you feel to be hindered in some way, why aren't I like the others? Why can't I get a girl like the other guys? Why don't I have the great high-paying job like the other guys? Why aren't I more successful in my music like the other guys? However, from our perspective, you are much further along the path of understanding self, which is the true objective of why you're here, than those other guys. Those other guys are much more concerned with the illusion than you are. They are much more focused on the sort of the superficial facade of life than you are. You are much more focused in understanding the deeper truths, which will be the ignition of the self-revelation. So, you are not behind those guys, you are in front of those guys. That's how we perceive it. So, let us now address some of these other topics you have brought to us. Regarding the acid reflux, we see there is going to be improvement. Thematic is this central concept that as you become more masterful in understanding the flow of energy, then these other peripheral situations will resolve. One of the reasons that you've had this problem with reflux is because you have as we've said, a larger degree of capacity to flow energy than is typical. Yet because of your taught inhibition from your childhood experiences, you have clamped this energy. Yet the clamping has occurred here. So in a way, the lower aspect of your chakral chain is still quite dilated. So there is quite a bit of energy which is flowing through this sort of lower component of your chakral chain. It is in this sort of the solar plexus region that the stifling has occurred, because the understanding that you took from this childhood experience was relevant to that chakra. And so it is here where you have compressed the energy. And so you have this situation which has been mounting and building throughout your life, where you have a rather large flow of energy coming through this lower part of the chakral chain, and then getting stymied at this central solar plexus chakra. And this is causing an energetic eddy, where the energy, instead of being able to flow directly through, some is being allowed through, but other of it is being redirected, and it's creating eddies. So it's kind of like sort of an energetic vortex, and its physical manifestation has been this sort of disruptive gastrointestinal chemistry, which is experienced as the gastric reflux. So, as you become more of an energy master, then this flow of energy will be less redirected, and you'll be able to dilate the solar plexus chakra, and this will begin to flow in a much more comprehensive way. And the energy vortex, or the energy eddies, where it's cycling, turning back into itself, will resolve, dissipate, and you'll find that a lot of the issues you have with the acidic reflux will also disappear. Regarding will you be able to eat and drink at the same time, we think yes, but we don't wish to say that because you had the surgery, so there has been anatomical changes. So we can't be certain of that. But we think definitely you will see significant resolution of that issue. Also, when you allow this energy to flow, when you become more of an energy master, you will have an enhancement in all kinds of capacities, including your ability to create music. So you will become more creative, and you will have a greater fire in your belly to be creative, to create sort of original musical content. We're not saying that this is going to become a career and you're going to become a success as a musician, but we are saying that there is going to be a sort of a greater connection with the music. You'll draw more satisfaction from the music. And this satisfaction for the music, this sort of familiarity, this constant state of being in sort of a melodic beauty of energy flowing through you frequently. This is going to greatly enhance your attractiveness to women. And so women who wouldn't have looked at you before are going to look at you through, perceive you through a completely different field of energy. So you'll be immersed in a field of energy of beauty, of love, of harmony, of melody. And when they perceive you, they will be perceiving also this sort of auric cloud, or this auric field that you are going to develop. And as such, they will perceive you as being a beautiful man, a beautiful human being. And this will happen more and more and more and more. And yet this is another reason why it's so relevant to you to become a master of energy, to reawakening this understanding you had from previous lives. We keep hammering on this because it is so aligned with the objectives of your higher self aspect. It does not want to miss out on this opportunity to experience that again, because it is such a fulfilling experience for the higher self aspect. When it can flow into the moment as your presence in such a robust and abundant way. Let us just make our final point. We don't want to descend into the minutiae of the small problems of your life, because we want to take your focus away from that, and we want you to sort of become more centrally focused on understanding this sort of central occurrence which happened in your life and its significance, because from that is going to be the flow over of so much sort of enrichment in your life. But instead we'll say just a sort of an overarching principle which we would like you to apply to these sort of smaller tribulations of your life. And you'll see that it also applies to this sort of very significant event which you had with the kundalini, the energy flow, the sort of that awakening state. You are living in a state of perfection. So your life is perfect. And this is a universal truth of all existence. It is perfection. So the useful relevance to take from that is when something happens in your life, and from the perception of the mind, it might be, I really wish that hadn't have happened. I hate that. That sucks. But the reality is that was a moment perfectly conducive to you fulfilling divine purpose, because every moment is. It can only exist in a state of perfection. Nothing can occur which isn't perfectly aligned and conducive to the fulfillment of divine purpose. So, when something occurs, which from the mind perspective, the avatar perspective was undesired, take the higher understanding and realize this occurred because it's the perfect, most conducive thing that could have happened for the fulfilling of the divine purpose. So, it's an occurrence for which thanks and gratitude are due. Not condemnation, not, why did that happen? That is a misuse of the experience. And it will create more experience or manifest more experiences where again, the most conducive emotional response will be, why did that happen? So, instead, recognize perfection and give thanks for what occurs. So these smaller things that are happening around your life, which you have discomfort with, look at them each individually and give thanks for this circumstance, for the experience. I acknowledge its perfection, and I believe that this has occurred because it is going to be the building block, the foundation of something much greater to come into my life. So, one day, you will look a woman in the eyes while she is nursing your children, and you will have the overwhelming feeling of how fortunate you have been to meet and discover and develop a relationship with this beautiful woman who you love so much, and now she has birthed your child in the immaculate gift of life. And that will have only been possible because the girl that you had the crush on, the one who you thought was very beautiful, did not reciprocate your feeling. It's only because of that scenario that this beautiful experience was able to come to pass. So, it occurs that way because that's necessary, the necessary foundation for the perfection to come to you. Use that principle. This woman, this future woman, she's a woman who will reciprocate your feelings. So, the perfect woman isn't the woman who seems to meet all of the attributes you desire. The perfect woman is a woman who has those attributes and reciprocates her feelings that you have for her. That's the perfect woman. Now, no matter how good her attributes are, if she does not, even when the conditions are appropriate, reciprocate your feelings, then she's not the perfect woman. So it's not a loss, it's not a tragedy, she's just not the one. So, let us conclude in this way. How often have you heard another person who is a complete novice in inter-energetic dynamics say things like, I'm able to raise the energy from the solar plexus and bring it up into my head so I can feel it behind the eyes? How many times have you heard that? I would suggest never. You have never heard another person say that. So what does this indicate? What does this suggest? This suggests that you have an unusual skill, an unusual capacity to understand and control the energy dynamics within the body. This is not luck. This is not a coincidence. This is something you have developed over past lifetimes. So reconnect with that. And you will be amazed at what you can become capable of. Because so much of it, so much of the understanding, so much of the skill, the knowledge, is within you, within the reservoir of experience across the full scope of incarnations. So, it can be pulled from the Akashic records, opened and then utilized again, reincorporated into your beingness in this lifetime. So, we give thanks that we had the opportunity to convey to you this very central, important message from your higher self aspect. We were the bridge between the avatar you know yourself as in this current incarnation and the higher self aspect. It is our honor and privilege to have performed this service. And it is our wish that going forward, this information, this connection now that you have more so with the higher self, can continue to grow and develop such that in the future you do not need a go-between, but can instead converse directly through an intuitive language with the higher self aspect and become masterful in all facets of your life and look back fondly with amusement at the confusion and the tribulations you faced as a younger man. We see a transformative vision for you, and we are very excited for you. Thank you, and we love you.